Hey, okay, so I need a fun topic to talk about. So let's talk about flying cars. Because as it turns out, somebody from my hometown invented a flying car. Oh, I've wanted to talk about this for quite some time. I just had to make sure that all the information was correct. Oh, good heavens. Yes, let's talk about this gentleman. But here's the thing, is that when I was researching for this particular subject, I had no idea just how many flying cars were invented after the war. I mean, it was like this trend after quite a few soldiers that were engineers. That's what it looked like anyway, that they were skilled in engineering and everything, went into building flying cars. I was surprised with just how many. Now, I'm only going to talk about two because the gentleman that I'm from my hometown actually crossed paths with another gentleman. And so these are the only two people that I'm going to talk about. But I highly recommend that you fall down the rabbit hole that I did. A lot of fun, flying cars. Why not? Because why didn't this keep going? I mean, flying cars. Come on. Why don't we have it still in 2023? We keep asking this. So, Moulton Taylor. Okay, Moulton, also known as Molt Taylor, was born September 29th, 1912 in Portland, Oregon, and then his family moved to this area. And as a boy, he loved, he had the model airplanes and everything. He loved airplanes, absolutely loved airplanes. So it's no wonder that he dedicated his life to to aircraft. And well, in high school, he worked at the airport that we have, which I guess was a lot better then than it is now. It's, yeah, it's really not much of anything now. But so at age 16, he received his pilot's license as well as what was the other thing an amateur radio operator's license. And he graduated high school in 1930. He graduated from R.A. Long High School. Since those of you that are from here, Mark Morris didn't exist yet. I do these videos about my hometown, and I have to remind myself that certain things just weren't here. Like when I did that last video, we have what's called the Ocean Beach Highway. I was finding articles about it, how it's being laid out. And I'm like, holy cow. My grandmother, who we just put into assisted living last year and we emptied out her house, she lived on that highway. My whole life we would visit. Yeah, it was just laid out in 1922. Good grief. And so, oh, good heavens. Yeah, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Well, and but the high school that Moulton went to and RA Long High School is named after our founder, Robert Alexander Long. And a little tidbit that I found out because my final for college was of the historic buildings here, and somebody told me that Robert Long was not happy when he found out that that high school was named after him. It's like we didn't agree on that. But anyway, back to Moulton. Taylor. So after high school, he attended University of Washington. He studied engineering, and after he graduated, he um, he went into the Navy. Uh, yeah, he was accepted into the United States Navy as a naval aviator during World War II. Spent much of the war working on the Navy's Gorgon missile program, make sure I say that right, for which he was awarded the Legion of Merit Medal. Okay. Now, there are other places that said that he graduated from the University of Washington during the Great Depression when jobs were scarce, which they were during the Great Depression. Let's not beat around the bush about that. So he joined the U.S. Navy's Aviation Cadet Training Program, and he attended the flight school in Pensacola and served for 3 years. Later, once the war broke out, he was recalled by the Navy, rising to the rank of commander in charge of developing pilotless aircraft. Um, it says that he designed an amphibian airplane known as the Coot, a one-seater aircraft called the Mini IMP, and a small amphibious plane he called the Duckling. He worked as a designer for the Learjet Corporation and started a business in partnership with his wife, Lillian Verneal Gregory, also a pilot, to sell airplanes. But his dream to design and build a flying car, one that could soar high above the traffic and then be parked safely, took hold of him and never let go. Um, so yeah, it was after the war that he really dedicated his life to this flying car concept. Um, and it it never let go for the rest of his life. I mean, I've never seen anyone so dedicated to something. I really haven't. I mean, I've with all the people that I have studied and researched, I mean, he truly believed that flying cars would happen. And so why didn't they? Oh, it's just too bad that they didn't. And yeah, this is why I say the future sucks, because now after the war, he was in Florida. He and his wife, uh, I believe that's where they were. And his whole idea of the flying car was that it would be a plane mobile. Uh, didn't have to always be both car and plane at the same time. If the wings and propellers were just accessories that could be put on before takeoff, then removed after landing. And basically, the car would look like a Mini Cooper. Um, you know, so he had that in mind. Now, the thing is that he saw in 1946, Robert Edison Fulton Jr. Now, Robert Edison Fulton Jr. is an American inventor and adventurer. And he traveled around the world on a motorcycle. That's what he's best known for. And he wrote a book about it, made a film, and I mean, I'll put all his information in. I'm not going to go full detail about it, but as it turns out, he made a flying car. Now, he was part of World War II. He invented an aerial flight trainer. Uh, when the military wasn't interested, he modified it into a training aid for aerial gunners. Yeah, he tried to do his part for the war. Um, and then after the war, he made this this flying car. Um, he called it the Fulton Amphibian. I don't know what it is about amphibian because if you remember, uh, Moulton called his airplane. Let's see, because he had the Coot and the Mini Imp, and then the amphibious plane called the Duckling. I don't know what it is about this wording. You can explain it to me. I have no problem with that. Okay. I would love because I didn't take a deep dive into the wording of it or anything. Now, with with Fulton's amphibian, it was released, it was introduced, I should say, in 1946. The number of prototypes is 4. Okay. And it has an aluminum body and fabric wings that are attached. Okay. Um, but the look of it, I have a real problem with the look of it. I'll put it up here. The look of it, it just looks like you're it looks like the cockpit of a plane. Why didn't he make the look better? I mean, this was during a time where everything was supposed to be so futuristic, right? And so why didn't he try to make it look a little more futuristic and compact, right? I don't know. I mean, I just and the problem that I have with this is from what I was reading about it, I'll of course put more information about it, is that because it's in 2 sections, basically you have once you're done flying the car, you have to move to the side of the road and you have to wait for somebody to come and take the section away. Otherwise, it's just sitting there on the side of the road as you go and go about your merry way. That's just I just what's the point? You know? Or maybe I'm missing something with it. But anyway, so now in now Moulton saw this. Okay. And he was seeing the flaws in it as well. And now again, remember there were other people who were making flying cars. So before people started, oh my gosh, he was copying, he was, all this stuff. Because I'm sure that there are people gonna A lot of people were making flying cars at the time. Let's just remind ourselves of that, okay? So, Fulton, I don't think was even the first. Okay, but he was famous for being the adventurer and all of that. So, I don't think his was even the most famous flying car. Let's just be honest with each other. But here's the thing is because he was a name, yeah. So so anyway, uh Taylor decided to figure out what to do. Well, his has flaws as well, but he did fix a few things. Okay. So while his has metal wings, the thing about it is that now there's a newsreel with Taylor's uh car being used. I mean, you see it being the wings being retracted and then somebody going up and flying it. And I'm surprised I haven't seen I tried to find anything like that for Fulton's. I couldn't find anything. If you know where there's a clip of that, put it put it in the comment section. I would love to see it because I couldn't find anything. I'm surprised. And but anyway, so the the thing about the Aerocar, it is titled the Aerocar. I didn't say that before. So Moulton's Aerocar was introduced again. All these words was introduced 3 years later in 1949. Okay, so his has retractable metal wings. Now, when you see it on the road, honestly, when the wings are against the car, it looks like a trailer is behind it. So one of those old-timey metal trailers. And yeah, just a small metal trailer. And so and so there's that's fixed, but the problem is that I was reading up on and I saw a lot of problems was that there's a lot of sound issues. So uh his Moulton's uh was used for a radio station around here and the radio host complained about how he was hearing a lot of rattling in the cockpit and everything, or in the car section and everything. Yeah. So I mean, and so that's a problem. Now, as for the look of the car, it looks so much better. It looks like a car. Okay, it looks like an actual flying car. Fulton's just looks like a smaller version of a plane. It doesn't look like a car at all. It really doesn't. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to sound like a fangirl over here, because again, there are flaws with Molten Tailors, and I'll put everything in the description so you can compare and contrast. And but yeah, with the amphibian, it just looks like a smaller, compact plane. It's like your own personal little plane. That's what the looks like. But with Molten's, car. It looks like a futuristic little car with wings, but there are flaws to it. There were flaws to it. Well, here's the other problem with these cars. Not just for Moulton, but for a lot of these others, and this is why it didn't take why the flying car concept didn't take off. Okay, now one thing that I know, like the newsreel showing off this car, yeah, it's really cool, and everybody is saying, "Oh yeah, that's really neat." One other thing, and I'll put it in the description box, is that Moulton Taylor was on, I think it was What's My Line, that old TV show and everything, and he was showing off the car. Yeah, one of those shows from the 50s, early 60s. So he's showing off this small little car and everything. People thought it was really neat, a thing of the future. And there was also a snippet of him. I will put it in the description box. I'll even mention at what point he shows up. And it was talking about uh things of the future, and things to make life easier in the future. And he shows up and flying car. And yeah, it had a whole thing about like how to make house cleaning easier, cooking easier, all that stuff, gardening easier, that whole thing. Anyway, so just like it says here, planes have to be lightweight to become airborne, but that same quality makes them unsafe and drive on the highway. Well, he was able to balance that out. He was able, one of the like Fulton's, I seem to remember reading that it was basically a gas guzzler, but he was somehow able to make it so that you could be in flight longer than Fulton's. Yeah, there were just so many different, and yeah, early test flights of the Aerocar had their ups and downs. One flight, the Aerocar spun out, causing Taylor to move his testing program to Chehalis, which had a longer runway. His vehicle was consistently reaching an altitude of 200 feet. 2 months after its first public flight, newspapers, magazines, and newsreel photographers began covering Aerocar's flights from every angle and throughout every maneuver. The publicity helped keep Taylor's dream alive. And I mean, that's great, but you need backers. I mean, you need people buying this thing. I I mean, let's be honest here. Do you think that Green Day would still be the band that they are today if we just saw them in the newspaper constantly? No. That's the whole thing about it. You got to be selling something. You know, their albums need to sell. Well, he's got to be selling an Aerocar. Yeah. And just like I said with the uh seeing him on that TV show showing off the car. Well, people thought it was great, but were they buying it? Were they going to go to the car lot and buy one? And yeah, being in the news is one thing, but yeah. That's that's something that we tend to forget. So so he finally, it says it took nearly 8 years, uh $75,000 and some 700 hours in the air for the Aerocar to win certification as airworthy from the CC for the Civil Aeronautics Administration. Um, when I was doing this video, I was talking to my parents about it, and because they remember the Aerocar, they remember seeing it on the roads here. And that was one thing, is that he was so dedicated to this becoming a reality that you would see the Aerocar all over in Longview. And he made 6 prototypes altogether, and you would see them here all the time. And so my parents saw them everywhere. You would you would walk around here and you would see, and it was an everyday thing to see one of them. And but it couldn't become an actual thing until you got the certification. Well, it was the same thing with Fulton's. Fulton got his in 1950, and I believe he got hit. When did he get his? Let's see, Aerocar. 1956. So it was 6 years after the Fulton Aerocar. I mean, am amphibian. And and I mean, sure, this thing was in magazines, newsreels, newspapers. It was being covered all over the place. And this is the thing that really hit home for me and made me realize why we don't have flying cars. So it says here, in spite of public interest and media excitement, Taylor was never able to find an aircraft company or automobile manufacturer to mass produce the Aerocar. He came closest in 1970. Now you think about this. Okay. Now he graduated high school in 1930. Okay. This is 1970. So 50 years of his life. Okay, now he'd been in the war, okay, and but his whole life had been about airplanes. But after the war, he had thought about making this thing. But again, that's something to take into consideration, is that 50 years at least. And so 1970, the president of the Ford Motor Company uh, researched the Aerocar's market feasibility. All right. The study produced by Ford showed a sales market of about 25,000 Aerocars annually. The new government safety and environmental regulations, coupled with concerns about thousands of regular people taking off into the air over major population centers, were huge issues, and Ford decided to pass on the project. You never think of that, but they did. You know, all we think about is the excitement of having these flying cars and everything. We don't take into consideration how many people would take off at the same time. I mean, yeah, that's a huge risk. That's big. I mean, the accidents that could happen every day in flight. I mean, it's bad enough that we have accidents on the road. To have them up in the air is terrible. So yeah, when I read that, I was just like, well, I mean, I get it. And I'm glad they did the research on that. And that was back in 1970, you know. And I mean, I would love to have flying cars. Absolutely love to have flying cars. But the reality of it is we're not ready for them. We we are not ready for them at all. And and but Moulton never gave up. He really didn't. He dedicated the rest of his life to um I mean he it says here that there were 5 to 7 Aerocars produced, either prototypes or production models, and so somewhere in that ballpark. And so either on display in aviation museums or in privately owned. And again, I'll have that information in the description box for you and everything. Um, Now it says here that he continued to push for the viability of the flying car throughout the rest of his life. He also designed a number of only slightly more conventional designs for the home built aircraft market. Yeah, and that was his the Coot and the amphibian and Aerocar imp family. Yeah, that he did. I don't know why it said that he did that because he did that in the war. Anyway, yeah, sometimes it. Anyway, so whenever he did it, he did it. So there was a 1979 article about the future of flight past the year 2000. And he inaccurately predicted widespread use of flying autos and pusher configurations. Again, he fully believed that it was going to happen. However, he did accurately predict the mainstream use of carbon materials for lightweight spars and wing ribs. And now the Clampmeyer brothers, Alan Lee and Dale Edward, they're now retired, but they are American aircraft designers and aviation entrepreneurs. They founded the Cirrus Design Corporation in the 80s. They received help and advice from Moulton Taylor. And but in November on November 16th, 1995, he passed away at the age of 83, continuing to believe that flying cars were going to happen. And you know, I mean, never give up on a dream. That's the bottom line. Never ever give up on a dream. And he had one and he was not going to give up. Not at all. And now the airport was named after him, but as of like a couple years ago, they changed the name to like Southwest Washington Airport, which really pissed me off. I was doing the research for this, and when I found out that they renamed it because they obviously they didn't know who Molt Taylor was. And they do this all the time over here, and it really, yeah, because it was named Molt Taylor Field, and it's like, well, we don't know who that is, so we're just gonna name it this. And it's like, All right, whatever. I mean, he worked there. And yeah. So anyway, yeah. Um, so, but like I said, he um received the Legion of Merit Medal in the war, and then he was also awarded the um Edward Long uh, my dyslexia did a thing. The Edward Longstreth Medal from the Franklin Institute in 1960. And then in 1975, he received the Experimental Aircraft Association um, Dr. August Raspet Memorial Award for significant advances in the field of light aircraft design. Then 6 days before his death, he was inducted into the Experimental Aircraft Association Hall of Fame. And so flying cars existed. You had Moulton Taylor, you had um, Robert Edison Fulton Jr., you had several other people, it was this big trend after the war. And but I will have all the information for you concerning Moulton Taylor, who is from my hometown, as well as Fulton. I will also put all the information concerning both of um, their flying cars so that you can compare. And, like I said, both of them are flawed. I'm trying not to, I don't want to sound like a big old fangirl for Taylor because he's from my hometown. Nah, his car was flawed too. But anyway, that's Moulton Taylor and his flying car.